The first light of dawn on the Vethrian homeworld was a gentle thing, a slow washing of the sky in hues of lavender and silver. Alara watched it from the balcony of their shared apartment, her fingers tracing the intricate pattern of a glowing, alien fern. She was a child of Earth, of vibrant greens and bold blues, but she had come to love the subtle beauty of this world. It was the world of the man she loved, and that made every strange color feel like home. "You are awake early." The voice, a soft, melodic baritone, came from behind her. Kellen stepped onto the balcony, his tall, slender frame moving with a natural grace that still sometimes made her heart skip a beat. His skin, the color of twilight, seemed to absorb the morning light, and his large, dark eyes, capable of conveying a universe of emotion, were fixed on her. "I couldn't sleep," Alara admitted, leaning back into his embrace as his arms wrapped around her. He rested his chin on her head, and they stood in silence for a long moment, watching the twin moons dip below the horizon. "Today is the day, today is the day," Kellen repeated, his voice steady but with an undercurrent of tension she knew well. "The council will announce its decision, and then, my Alara, we will no longer have to hide." For a year, their relationship had been a secret, a precious and fragile thing, a human xenobotanist and a Vethrian cultural liaison. They had found each other in the quiet spaces between diplomatic functions and research symposia. Their love was a violation of unspoken rules, a transgression against the Galactic Council's strict policies, of non-fraternization with pre-evaluated species. But today, humanity's application for full membership was being voted on. Success would mean Earth joining the galactic community, and all such restrictions would fall away. "Imagine it," Alara whispered, turning in his arms to face him. "We could walk through the crystal markets without a care. We could visit Earth together. You could see the redwoods, Kellen. You could feel the sun on a California beach." A slow, genuine smile touched his lips. "I would like to feel this sun of yours, and I would very much like to walk with you anywhere, with everyone knowing you are my heart." He kissed her then, and it was a kiss filled with all the hope and promise of the future they had dared to imagine. It tasted of the sweet Vethrian nectar they had for breakfast and the faint, clean scent of the air after a rain. It felt like a beginning. The hours that followed were an agony of waiting. They stayed close, talking of small things, avoiding the giant what-if that loomed over them. Alara showed him images of Earth, and he told her stories of Vethrian constellations. They were in their own little bubble, a sanctuary built from love and defiance. When the communication alert chimed, sharp and insistent, they both jumped. Kellen moved to the console in the main living area, his posture straightening into its formal, diplomatic bearing. Alara hovered by the balcony door, her hands clasped tightly together. The screen flickered to life, showing the assembled Galactic Council. The Chancellor, a being of immense age and presence, began to speak. The language was formal, full of convoluted syntax, but Alara understood the gist. They spoke of humanity's rapid, but unstable, development. They cited historical patterns of conflict and a lack of proven galactic empathy. The words were cold, clinical, and utterly final. Humanity's application for membership was rejected. The air left Alara's lungs. It felt like a physical blow. She looked at Kellen, whose back was to her, rigid and still. Then the Chancellor continued. "Furthermore," the translated voice intoned, "to prevent cultural contamination and to ensure the stability of the candidate species, all existing interspecies cohabitation and intimate bonds are hereby declared null and void. Such relationships are prohibited, effective immediately. Any beings found in violation will face severe sanctions." The world stopped. The silence in the room was heavier than any sound Alara had ever heard. It was a silence that crushed dreams, that shattered futures. Kellen slowly turned to face her. The hope in his eyes was gone, replaced by a devastation so profound it made her gasp. The formal mask of the diplomat had completely fallen away, leaving only a man who had just lost everything. Alara. Her name was a breath, a prayer, a sob. "No," she whispered, shaking her head. They can't do this." But they could. They had. A chime at their door announced the arrival of enforcement officers. Their time was up. Their goodbye was a frantic, desperate thing. There was no time for words, only for one last, searing kiss. A kiss that tasted of salt and despair. His fingers tangled in her hair, as if he could memorize its texture forever. "I will find a way," he vowed against her lips, his voice breaking. "I promise you." Then he was gone, escorted from his own home by impassive officers. Alara was given 1 hour to pack her personal effects and be on a transport back to Earth. She moved through the apartment in a daze, her tears falling on the alien fern she had been tending. She packed her data chips, her clothes, the small, smooth stone Kellen had given her from a river on his world. As the ship lifted off from V3, she watched the lavender sky recede, the planet becoming just another star in the vast, cold blackness. The Galactic Council had not just rejected humanity. They had reached into her heart and torn out the most beautiful thing she had ever known. And as the stars streaked past the viewport, a cold, hard resolve began to form within her, crystallizing from the ashes of her grief. They thought they could cage the human heart. They were wrong. 5 years. It felt like a lifetime, and the blink of an eye all at once. The memory of V3 was a phantom limb, an ache that never truly faded. Alara had not returned to Earth to wallow. She had gone to the one place that promised purpose over pity, the frontier. The human colony of Nova Prospectus was a testament to defiance, a vibrant, chaotic sprawl of human ingenuity built in a star system the Council had deemed uninhabitable. It was here, surrounded by the rust-colored cliffs and bioluminescent flora of an alien world, that Alara had buried her heartache in the soil. She was the head of xenobotany now, her small research dome a jungle of strange, hybrid life. She'd learned to find solace in the unfurling of a new leaf, the subtle communication of a fungal network. It was a quiet life, a meaningful one, and she had convinced herself it was enough. The past was a locked box, and she had thrown away the key. The sky was bleeding into the deep indigo of twilight when the silence shattered. A shrieking whine, the sound of tearing metal, ripped through the air. Alara dropped her soil sampler and ran to the dome's viewport. A streak of fire and debris carved a path across the heavens, culminating in a distant, ground-shaking impact somewhere beyond the eastern ridge. The colony's emergency channel crackled to life. Unauthorized crash landing, Sector 7, non-human signature. All security and medical teams, mobilize. Her blood ran cold, non-human. After 5 years of silence, had the Council finally come to enforce their quarantine? She grabbed her emergency pack and joined the stream of colonists heading for the motor pool. As the head of her department, her presence was required for any first contact or first hostility scenario. The crash site was a scene of controlled chaos. The ship was a mangled crescent of elegant, silvery alloy, now scarred black and twisted. It was unmistakably Vethrian, a knot of pure, undiluted emotion equal parts terror and a forbidden, treacherous hope tightened in Alara's chest. Colonial security teams had the area surrounded, their rifles trained on the smoking hull. The ship's hatch hissed, then buckled, falling away to reveal a figure stumbling into the thin, cold air. He was tall, with the characteristic slender build and twilight-hued skin of his kind. But it was not Kellen. The relief was so acute it felt like a new kind of grief. This Vethrian was older, his face etched with lines of pain and authority, his formal robes torn and smudged with soot. One of his arms was held awkwardly against his chest, clearly injured. He raised his one good hand in a universal gesture of peace, his dark eyes scanning the ring of hostile human faces. They landed on Alara, the only one not holding a weapon, her expression one of stunned recognition rather than fear. "I am Torin," he said, his voice strained but precise. I was, a senior diplomat of the Vethrian Concord. I seek sanctuary." The colony's head of security, a gruff man named Carter, stepped forward. "You're in violation of Galactic Council Edict 7 Alpha. Your presence here is an act of aggression." The Council, Torin spat the word, a surprising venom in his tone, "is in ruins. A scourge we called the Cathar. They are tearing through the core systems. V3 has fallen. My ship was one of the last to escape. We were trying to find you." A stunned silence fell over the humans. The arrogant, unassailable Galactic Council, brought low. V3, a pinnacle of civilization, conquered. It was unimaginable. Why us? Carter demanded, his rifle not wavering. Because you are the only ones who ever defied them. Torrin said, his gaze flicking back to Alara, holding hers. And because I carry a message for the botanist. For Alara, the world narrowed to that single point. The air left her lungs. Carter looked at her, his expression a mix of suspicion and confusion. Kim, he knows your name? Alara stepped forward, her legs feeling like water. What message? Torrin's posture, even in his injured state, held a remnant of diplomatic pride. It is not for the crowd. It is for you alone. After a tense negotiation, Alara found herself sitting across from Torrin in the sterile environment of the colony's infirmary. A medic had set his arm and treated his burns. The formal robes were gone, replaced by standard tissue medical scrubs, making him look strangely vulnerable. You were Kellen's rival, Alara stated quietly. The memory surfacing. You argued against any interaction with humanity at the preliminary hearings. I did. Torrin admitted without shame. I believed the council's assessment was correct. I thought your species was a risk. I was. Short-sighted, he let out a long, pained breath. Kellen never stopped fighting for you, for your people. After the rejection, he was reassigned, his career sidelined. But he continued his research in secret. He believed the council's rigid pacifism was a fatal flaw. He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a whisper. The Cathar are a biological hive mind. They consume, they adapt, they cannot be reasoned with. Our weapons, our shields, they learn to bypass them in hours. But Kellen, he theorized they might have a fundamental, biological weakness, a sensitivity to certain resonant frequencies, a flaw in their cellular communication. Alara's mind, ever the scientist, was already racing, connecting dots, like a specific phytochemical reaction, a frequency that disrupts symbiotic bacteria. Torrin nodded slowly. He said you would understand. He said you were the only one who could. He reached into a small, sealed pouch on his discarded robes and produced a data crystal, no larger than her thumbnail. This contains all his research, his life's work. He risked everything to get it to me as our world fell. His last words to me were, get this to her. She will know what to do. Tell her. Tell her I kept my promise. Alara took the crystal. It was cool in her palm, but it felt like it held the heat of a star. 5 years of carefully constructed walls crumbled in an instant. He had not forgotten. He had fought for her in the only way he could. And now his hope, his trust, was literally in her hand. She looked from the data crystal to Torrin, the arrogant diplomat who had once scorned her very existence, now sitting broken and desperate before her. The Galactic Council that had rejected them was scrambling in the face of an enemy they couldn't comprehend. And the man she loved had, from light years away, handed her the key. Carter, she said, her voice no longer that of a quiet botanist, but ringing with a newfound authority. Assemble the science team. We have work to do. The rejection had been ending. This, she realized, was a beginning. The data crystal felt like a live wire in Alara's hand, humming with unspoken words and unspent hope. She led Torrin from the infirmary not to the main science building, but to her private research dome. The air inside was thick, humid, and smelled of rich earth and alien chlorophyll. It was her sanctuary, and now it would become their war room. She inserted the crystal into her terminal. The screen bloomed to life, not with cold data streams, but with a personal log entry. And there he was, Kellen. 5 years had etched subtle lines at the corners of his eyes, and the youthful hope she remembered was now a hardened, determined light. But his voice, when he spoke, was the same melody that had haunted her dreams. Alara, if you are seeing this, then Torrin succeeded, and my fears for our people are realized. I am so sorry. Sorry for the silence, for the distance, for every sunrise you faced without me. A sob caught in Alara's throat. She could feel Torrin standing silently behind her, a witness to this intimate violation. But she couldn't look away. The council's rejection was not just a political act. Kellen continued, his image flickering. It was a failure of imagination. They see the universe as a thing to be cataloged and controlled. But you taught me to see it as a living, breathing network. You showed me how the flora of my world communicates, defends, and adapts. That is the key. The recording shifted, his face replaced by complex biomolecular models. The Cathar are not a machine. They are an organism, a hyper-evolved fungal intelligence. Their strength is their interconnectedness, a mycelial network that spans their ships and their warriors. But that is also their weakness. Every network has a root. Every symbiosis can be disrupted. For the next hour, Alara devoured his research. It was brilliant, unorthodox, and deeply rooted in the principles of xenobotany they had once discussed on his balcony. He had identified a specific resonant frequency that, when amplified, would cause catastrophic harmonic dissonance in the Cathar's core cellular structure. It wouldn't destroy them with brute force, but rather make their own interconnected nature toxic to them. He was considered a radical. Torin said quietly, his voice cutting through her concentration. The military command laughed at him. Plant frequencies against warships, they said. They preferred to build bigger plasma cannons. And now, those cannons are scrap metal orbiting a dead world. Alara finally turned to look at him. The disdain she had expected to see was gone, replaced by a weary, profound respect. He was right. The principle is sound. We've observed similar resonant fragility in the sport hours here on Nova Prospectus. A specific ultrasonic frequency makes them rupture. Can you do it? Torin asked, the fate of his entire species hanging on the question. Not with your technology. Alara said, her mind already racing through the possibilities. Your systems are designed for refinement and stability. You'd try to create a perfect wave, but nature is messy. We'd need to create a chaotic, overlapping resonance, a cacophony that their network can't adapt to because it's never the same twice. She stood up, energy coursing through her. We need to modify our terraforming array. It's designed to broadcast wide-spectrum sonic pulses to encourage soil development. We can recalibrate it. The days that followed were a blur of frantic, focused activity. Alara became the nexus, the translator between Kellen's theory and human practicality. She worked with the colony's engineers, her hands stained with soil and grease, her notes scrawled on every available surface. Torin, despite his injury, proved invaluable. He understood the theoretical limits of Vethrian technology, what the Cathar would be expecting, what they had already adapted to. Late one night, they were alone in the dome, surrounded by the gentle, sleeping hum of the alien flora. The main work was done. The terraforming array was being retrofitted. All that remained was the final frequency calibration. He never stopped loving you, you know, Torin said abruptly, his gaze fixed on a glowing, pulsating moss. It was an open secret. It was why his career stagnated. They called him the human's shadow. He wore the title like a badge of honor. Alara's hands stilled on her data pad. Why are you telling me this? Because I was wrong, he said, meeting her eyes. I judged your species by its conflicts. I did not see its capacity for this. He gestured around the dome, at the synthesis of human and Vethrian knowledge coming to life. Kellen saw it. He saw the strength in your chaos, the power in your ability to grow something from nothing. I see it now, too. The simple admission was more profound than any apology. It was a bridge, built not just from necessity, but from genuine understanding. A young engineer, Lena, burst into the dome, her face alight with excitement. Alara, we've got it. The preliminary tests on the localized emitter are. It's working. The sample you cultivated from the Cathar debris Torin brought. It's dissolving. It's not being destroyed. It's just falling apart. Like a conversation it can no longer hear. A collective breath, held for days, was finally released. They had done it. Kellen's theory, filtered through Alara's understanding and human ingenuity, had borne fruit. Alara looked from Lena's triumphant face to Torin's, which held a look of stunned, reverent awe. In that moment, she wasn't just a botanist on a backwater colony. She was the keeper of a promise, the architect of a hope that the mighty Galactic Council had been unable to conceive. The memory of Kellen was no longer a ghost in her heart. It was the very engine of their salvation. The message had been delivered, and the memory had become a weapon. The air in the command center was thick with a static mix of triumph and terror. On the main viewer, the modified terraforming array, now dubbed the Resonance Lance, had performed flawlessly in its final test. A simulated Cathar swarm, modeled from the debris of Torin's ship, had simply disintegrated into inert, gray dust. A quiet cheer had gone up, quickly stifled by the grim reality of what came next. They had the cure, but the patient the galaxy was dying light years away. Then the long-range sensors flared. Unknown contact, entering the system's edge. It's its Vethrian signature. A warship. The steadfast resolve. Alara's heart slammed against her ribs. Torrin stood up straighter, a complex wave of relief and apprehension on his face. That is Kellen's ship. Or it was. The sleek, dagger-like vessel did not take up an aggressive posture. Instead, it moved slowly, deliberately, into a high orbit and launched a single, unarmed shuttle towards the colony. The request for landing clearance was simple, containing only one passenger's name and a single line. He comes under a flag of truce. To speak with the LARA. The wait on the landing pad was an eternity compressed into minutes. The wind whipped stray strands of hair across Alara's face as the shuttle settled, its engines whining down into silence. The hatch opened, and then he was there. Kelen. He looked older, far older than 5 years should have allowed. His formal diplomatic attire was gone, replaced by the practical, dark jumpsuit of a military officer, but it bore no rank insignia. His face, once so open, was now a landscape of sharp angles and weary lines. But his eyes were the same. When they found hers, the years melted away, and she was back on the balcony, watching the lavender dawn. They stood 10 paces apart, the gulf of time and war between them. The colony security detail, Carter included, watched tensely. Torrin stood slightly behind Alara, a silent sentinel. Alara, Kellen said, and her name on his lips was a bomb and a blade all at once. You came, she whispered, the words barely audible. I promised I would find a way. He took a hesitant step forward, then another, until he was close enough to touch. His gaze drank her in, tracing the lines of her face, the set of her shoulders. You have thrived. This place, it suits you. You kept your promise, she said, her voice trembling. Your research. We made it work. A flicker of a smile, sad and proud, touched his mouth. Torrin's message said as much. You cannot know what that means, what you have done. His eyes then shifted to Torrin, and he gave a slow, respectful nod. My old friend, you delivered my heart. I am in your debt. The debt is to her, Kellen, Torrin replied, his voice gentle. And to her people. Kellen's attention returned to Alara, the intensity in his gaze deepening. The remnant of the council is in disarray. They are scattered, hiding. The Cathar are methodically consuming the core systems. They will be here, eventually. Your resonance weapon. It is the only hope we have. The only hope any of us have. Then we will give it to you, Alara said without hesitation. The schematics, the frequency algorithms, everything. A profound sorrow clouded Kellen's features. It is not that simple. The Council's edict against humanity still stands in the eyes of the surviving factions. To bring them your weapon, I would have to reveal that I conspired with you, that I gave you our most sensitive biological data. They would see it as treason, not salvation. He took a final step, closing the distance between them. His hand came up, his fingers hovering just beside her cheek, not quite touching. So I made a trade. Alara's breath hitched. What trade? My freedom for your chance, he said, his voice low and raw. I have formally renounced my position, my citizenship, and my standing before the Vethrian remnant government. I am an exile, a ghost. In return, they have agreed to look at the data packet. I will send them the data you created. They will not know it came from you, only that it came from me, a disgraced traitor with one last desperate idea. The truth of his sacrifice crashed over her. He had not just kept his promise. He had burned his entire world, his very identity, to keep it. He had traded his place among the stars for a sliver of hope that she had helped him forge. No. She breathed, her own hand coming up to finally grasp his. His fingers were cool, but they curled around hers with a familiar, desperate strength. Kellen, you can't. I already have, he whispered, his forehead leaning against hers. A gesture so intimate it made the watching crowd seem to vanish. It was the only way. To save my people, yes, but more than that, to come back to you. To be free to stand here, like this, without hiding. The price was everything I had left, except for you. Tears she had held for 5 years finally fell, tracing hot paths down her cheeks. He had chosen her, not just in secret, not just in theory, but in the most brutal, public, and costly way possible. He had chosen her over his people, his title, his very name. "You are my people now, Alara," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. "If you will have me, this colony, this messy, beautiful, defiant world you have built, this is my home. You are my home." In the silence of the landing pad, under the cold light of an alien sun, Alara didn't answer with words. She answered by closing the last inch between them and kissing him. It was not the desperate, fearful kiss of their parting, nor the hopeful one of their dawn. It was a kiss of homecoming, of a promise not just kept, but redeemed. It was a kiss that sealed a pact, not just of love, but of a future they would now build together. From the ashes of the old galaxy, the Council had rejected them, but in that rejection, they had found something infinitely stronger. The message from the Galactic Council's remnant was not delivered by a grand delegation, but by a single, frantic data stream, heavily encrypted and piggybacking on a Vethrian civilian distress frequency. It was addressed to the inhabitants of the Third World in the Nova Prospectus system, a deliberate, face-saving avoidance of the word human. It was a plea, the resonance frequency. The cacophony born from Cullen's theory and Alara's practical genius had worked. The Vethrian remnant, forced by desperation to test the traitor's data, had used a scaled-down version to break a Cathar siege round a refugee fleet. For the first time, the inexorable advance had been not just halted, but reversed. The Cathar, faced with a weapon that turned their greatest strength against them, recoiled in disarray. The news spread through the surviving factions like a shockwave. The Council was saved, not by its own might, but by the ingenuity of the species it had cast out. And now, they were scrambling. The Council's Chancellor, the same one who had delivered the rejection 5 years prior, appeared on the main viewer in Nova Prospectus's command center. His form was flickering, his voice stripped of its former grandeur, laced with a humbling exhaustion. "To the people of the world you call Nova Prospectus," the translated voice began, "this council, what remains of it, wishes to open a dialogue. We recognize that past assessments may have been premature. We formally extend an offer of full membership and integration into the galactic community, effective immediately. We request your aid." A silence hung in the room, thick and heavy. The colony's leader, a pragmatic woman named Captain Vance, stood with her arms crossed. Beside her stood Alara, Kellen, and Torin. They were a living representation of the new reality, human, Vethrian, former diplomat, united. Captain Vance nodded to Alara. "This is your call, Kim. It was your work, your choice." Alara looked at Kellen, whose hand found hers, his fingers lacing tightly through her own. His exile, his sacrifice, was the foundation of this moment. She looked at Torin, who gave her a slow, respectful nod. Then she stepped forward toward the comms panel. "Chancellor," she said, her voice clear and steady, devoid of malice but also of submission. "Humanity hears your request, and we decline." A visible shock registered on the Chancellor's face on the screen. "Decline, but the membership, the technology. We do not wish to join your council," Alara continued, echoing the words Kellen had once risked everything for. "We propose something new. The council's structure, its fear of conflict and difference, is what led you to this crisis, is what tore lives apart." She squeezed Kellen's hand. "We propose a galactic union, a true alliance of equals, where no species is deemed unworthy, where knowledge is shared, not hoarded, and where the strength of one is the strength of all." She paused, letting the audacity of the proposal sink in. "We will give you the resonance technology, freely. We ask for nothing in return but a seat at a new table, one we build together. The alternative is to face the Cathar alone. The choice is yours." The silence from the other end of the transmission was absolute. They were not being offered subservience. They were being offered a partnership by the ones they had spurned. It was a more profound humiliation than any military defeat. Weeks later, the formal ceremony was not held at the damaged Zenith Prime, but in the main square of Nova Prospectus, under the rust-colored sky. Representatives of a dozen species, haggard and grateful, stood amidst the bustling, unpolished energy of the human colony. The charter for the Galactic Union was signed on a simple metal table, forged from the hull of a Cathar scout ship they had defeated. Ka-Yelien, no longer an exile, but a founding emissary of the new Vethrian provisional government, stood beside Alara, his status not just restored, but transformed. He was a bridge. Torin stood on his other side, his once rigid posture now relaxed, a small, genuine smile on his face as he watched human and Vethrian children playing together near the bioluminescent gardens. As the ceremony concluded, Alara and Kellen slipped away, walking hand in hand toward her research dome. The air was cool, smelling of the strange, sweet night-blooming flowers she had cultivated. "You were magnificent," Kellen said softly, his thumb stroking the back of her hand. "You did not just defeat them. You offered them a way to become better." "We did it," she corrected him, leaning her head against his shoulder. "Your promise, your theory, our love," he whispered, stopping to turn and face her. The lights from the colony twinkled in his dark eyes. "That was the seed. All of this, the union, the peace, it grew from that." He reached into a fold of his new, simple tunic and pulled out a small, velvety pouch. From it, he produced a ring, crafted not from metal, but from a single living, intertwined strand of a Vethrian crystal vine and an earth-born silver root. It pulsed with a soft, symbiotic light. "In my culture, we give a stone from our home," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "In yours, I am told, a ring is traditional. This is both. A new thing, for a new beginning. Alara, will you build this life with me? Officially, publicly, for as long as our stars burn?" Alara felt a joy so profound it was almost painful. She looked at the ring, a perfect symbol of their union, then back into the eyes of the man who had given up everything for her, and found a universe in return. "Yes," she said, her voice clear and sure under the alien constellations. "Always, yes." As he slipped the ring onto her finger, a cheer went up from the square behind them. The first joint human Vethrian deep space explorer, its hull painted with both their symbols, was ascending into the sky, its engines a brilliant promise against the night. The Council had rejected them, but in their scrambling return, they had found not subjects, but partners, and in the quiet of the garden, to hearts that had refused to be caged finally, completely, came home